Hey everybody, it's Curse, and today I'm going to bless you with my thoughts and review of Path of Exile. It has been a while since I played this game. Last time I touched it, and I checked on Steam, it said December 2013. So it had been exactly 10 years since I had last played, and I fired it up again for this Affliction League that started a week and a half ago. Because with POE 2 coming out soon, and with so many good things I keep hearing about Path of Exile, I just wanted to give it another try. And I knew it was a good game. I just never had the opportunity to go too deep into it. And I can't tell you how many people from chat have always told me that you got to try out Path of Exile. It's a great game. You're going to love it. It's a perfect fit for you. And so I did. Let me share my experience with you. So let's start by talking about the campaign. Because of the fact that I hadn't played this game in so long, I had no idea where I should be going, what I should be doing, what is good. I was following a guide on which skills to pick and which passives to pick, so that made things a little bit easier. But still, the game has a lot of content. It took me about 2 hours per act, I want to say, so maybe roughly 20 hours to complete the campaign. Yeah, it was extensive. Regardless, the campaign is pretty long, especially when you don't know what you're doing. Overall, though, it's fairly fun. What takes away from the fun of it is that when you're playing on multiplayer and there's a trading economy going on, you're very much incentivized to just rush through it to get to the very end so that you're able to get to the juicy items first and you can sell them on the auction house or buy them on the trading market, whatever it is, and get ahead of the curve. So you're incentivized to stay as short of a period as possible on the campaign. So enjoying the campaign is not an option. So having 10 acts can get a little bit annoying. But, overall, I kind of enjoyed the campaign. I'm not sure about replaying it and trying to rush through it in like 3 or 4 hours, which seems to be roughly the standard for really knowledgeable grinders. But I don't know. We'll see whether I end up replaying it again. It's a big commitment, I have to say. But this entire game is a big commitment. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Those are my thoughts on the campaign. It's solid, nothing spectacular. The fights are interesting and probably more challenging if you don't follow a guide and you're actually just kind of stumbling your way through. But with the guide, I felt fine. Given the fact that I was also spending way too much time in each act, I was over leveled by like 5 to 10 levels over the monsters. So that made things a lot easier as well. And then once you complete the campaign, you unlock what is called the Atlas. And this is basically one of the many, infinitely many in-game systems in Path of Exile. Each one of these little dots is a map. You can see right here, this is a siege map of tier 8, and they have tiers, each one of them from 1 to 16. And I have a thing right now that increases the tier levels, so you can see tier 1 to tier 16 without it. And so as you go through and progress through your maps, you unlock more points on a secondary passive tree. So this is called your Atlas passive tree, and I managed to get, I think, most of them, if not all of them, from this passive tree. And this game has a metagame upon a metagame upon a metagame upon a metagame. The way you're designing your build, it's to fit a certain activity frequently. So the complexity of this game is absolutely ridiculous when it comes to skills and skill point allocation, just because of this Atlas tree, as well as your passive tree. You could have a character that excels at doing a certain activity, but if you don't enjoy that activity and you haven't spec'd into it in your Atlas tree, well, then you kind of have to end up doing something else, and you might end up shooting yourself in the foot. But still, as long as you're having fun, I think that's fine. And I think that's a major theme of the game. Give the players incredible optionality as to what they can do and how they can fill their time within the game so that they can tailor their experience to their enjoyment. And I think that's a really good design. So I overall enjoyed the process of filling up my Atlas tree by essentially completing each one of these maps. That was fairly enjoyable. Again, very time consuming because I did it extremely poorly. I did not optimize at all. I was just kind of trying to do every single activity that I ran into. So I was full clearing every map. And I'm pretty sure the objective of the game is to get to end game ASAP. And so if you're full clearing the maps on the bottom here, that's a misplay. That's an error in terms of getting towards the actual real objective if you're looking to optimize your gameplay. So these are many things that I learned along the way. And I will try to maybe make another short video about my learnings as a relatively new Path of Exile player, but things that I've identified that I've made major errors on that I could maybe help out other people with. But obviously I'm still very new to the game, so it will all be advice that comes with a huge grain of salt. It's basically my first impressions as to how a noob can avoid being a major noob like me. So the mapping and activities within each map gameplay, I thought, is really well executed. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming in that you have 20 different activities as an option, and they're all essentially bombarding you. For example, there are these smuggler's caches, and once you open them, they give you a quest mission for the heist. It's something that you cannot remove from your inventory, so you cannot essentially stash it for later. So you're either not picking these up, or you're forced into doing them right away so that you can get them out of your inventory. It's kind of annoying. And so I end up bouncing back and forth between maps and then heists and then maybe doing some blight maps. And then that can get a little bit overwhelming in that you're not progressing on, many of these fronts because you're just bouncing back and forth between them. So that's kind of how I felt. Part of that is user error. It's something that maybe I should adjust in a future playthrough. As you get more familiar with the game, you know what activity you like more so than other activities. So you can actually spec into it nice and early and avoid respecking your passive tree 100 times like I did. But yeah, the depth of the game is great for the most part. It's just sometimes it can derail you and end up being a little bit frustrating at times. Now let's talk about some of the activities that are in this tree here. I ended up going for Delirium, which, you go through that mirror of Delirium and you got to kill enemies quickly so that you fill your Delirium progress bar. That felt pretty good. I enjoy Mirrors of Delirium quite a bit. But on top of that, I spec'd into Blight as well. The only issue that I have with Blight, however, is that I don't enjoy it running into it while I'm running a Mirror of Delirium. And I'm pretty sure that the game pauses your Delirium progress and your Delirium fog dissipation while you're doing your blights. However, it just breaks the pace of the game. It doesn't feel good. And essentially, the way that I like to run the blights is through those blight-specific maps. Blight Infested or, the second higher tier blight-infested maps. Those I enjoy. I quite enjoy it because you're essentially going just for the blight, and it's a one big blight fight, whereas the ones that you run into in the middle of the maps, they're just tiny little 5-wave blight tower defense things, and that's the other reason I don't really like them within the maps. And so what ends up happening because of my setup here, and you'll notice I even have blight encounters turned off in my maps. That's how much I prefer not to do them in the maps and just to receive maps that are blight infested. And what ends up happening by doing that is there's a little bit of a counter synergy between my Delirium and my blight in that I'm never gonna run blight within maps. I'm either running maps for Delirium or blight maps for blight only, and there will never be the two of them at the same time, and they don't synergize well, essentially. And there are other activities, for example, that will increase your Delirium bar and synergize with Delirium within the maps pretty well. Any activity that creates extra monsters and doesn't pause your Delirium, that's a good synergy with Delirium. So that's something that I've realized certain activities, even though you enjoy them in a certain way, if they don't synergize well, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by speccing into both of them. And the last thing I specced into is a little bit of heist. I don't have enough points to cover all the heist stuff, but I just recently started doing the big heist grand plans or whatever they're called, and I was quite enjoying them. So I specced into that so I can get a few more smuggler's caches and even blueprints, stuff like that. In terms of my build, I'm running an SRS Guardian, and so that is a minion build where you summon these little guardians. You have a limit of 20, and they just run around and kill everything. It's pretty smooth. You're heavily reliant as well on this Radiant Crusade, which is one giga tanky, giga strong minion that has, for some reason, an aura that full clears the entire screen for you. I don't know. It seems a little bit overtuned to me. But regardless, yeah, that's the build that I'm running. It's pretty good. And I think it's one of the most noob-friendly builds in the entire game, which is why I'm running it. I'm trying to make things easy for myself. And this one does indeed make things easy for me. Yeah, so I'm not an expert on the build or on the passive skill tree. I can't really comment on that too much. But the build itself is solid. The itemization. So let's talk a little bit more about the itemization. I've made progress on min-maxing some of my items, but I'm certainly not very far ahead. Just because of the fact that I really don't know what I'm doing and I'm still learning. I've had to watch a lot of guides on crafting or even what item is good for which slot on my build. But yeah, basically my entire build or all my items, it's probably worth less than 2 divines, maybe less than 1 divine. I don't know. Actually, no, I bought my amulet for like a divine, so maybe everything is less than 3 divines. Let's say that. That should be likely true. And the way that the game and the itemization works is just so heavily reliant on the trading. And that can be a tad frustrating at times. Basically, if you want to be identifying items, that's a huge waste of time. You're going through so many items, you're clicking so much, and you're rarely finding any upgrades. I don't know, the items that drop in this game, they're never good for some reason. I don't know why. But you go on the trade house, you actually find pretty good stuff for pretty cheap, really. And then you buy it with currency that you've earned through farming. And that's kind of the gameplay loop. A lot of people don't actually find their own items. I would say probably most people are working off of 0 items that they have found themselves, and maybe the best that they might have done is buy an item and then craft on top of it to get the item that they're wearing. And that leads me to touch on the trading system in this game, which is so integral to the entire structure of the game. The drop rates are very much designed around the trading, and in order to trade efficiently and really properly, you need to have so many tools in the game. You need to have this awakened POE thing that essentially just tells you the price of every item. You just click Control D and it pops up this little mini window that tells you exactly how much each of these items is worth, or roughly how much each of the items is worth based on similar items on the market. And that can be a little bit gamed by abusers on the market as well. But overall, to participate in the trade economy in this game is almost a must if you're looking to be efficient. And it is also very cumbersome because of how the trading system is set up. Anytime you want to trade an item, you have to go back to town from your map, and you have to actually move the item to inventory, move the item to the trade window, click accept, blah, blah, blah. It's very disruptive to your gameplay. It's just not ideal, not really fun, that part of the game. But also the trading itself, where sometimes you end up spending hours upon hours on the trading site trying to find the item that you want, and then you send a bunch of messages to people that never respond. It can get really frustrating. That's the other thing, is this game, one of the ways that it makes money is by selling you stash tabs. And the way that it sells you stash tabs is by creating new game mechanics that require stash tabs. And so that means you have infinitely many different currency and item types. And really, you don't need 95 to 99% of them. And so you end up wanting to sell most of your stuff, most of whatever you found, whether it is maps or currency even, or these cards that you have. There's just so many different things that the game drops for you that you have to sell. That can also be extremely cumbersome. Trying to sell every single one of these little items, that's just not for me. It's not fun. Maybe once they get in a large enough quantity, I'll get around to doing that. But before that, it's just, oh my God, it's just such a waste of time. So overall, the trading for me is, I have a love-hate relationship with it. Sometimes I get excited about thinking about arbitrage opportunities, of finding potentially ways to buy cheap and sell, maybe do a little bit of crafting and then sell high. Finding arbitrage opportunities like that seems like a fun idea to me until I actually try to implement it and trying to actually buy items. And there are so many people that try to scam by underlisting or underpricing items, but never actually intending to sell them. And just with an attempt to lower the price of the item, essentially, is what I'm gathering. And there's a lot of that in the game. And so overall, my experience with the trading economy of the game is just not that pleasant, I want to say. Playing solo self-found may be a solution for me, but given how new I am to the game, that also doesn't make sense. I'm just on the fence with trading, I want to say. I love how Last Epoch are implementing trading on that front, and that is giving the optionality to the player. You're either fully in the trade economy or you're out and you get a drop buff, and the items that you drop cannot be traded in any way. I love that solution, and I have a lot of respect for Last Epoch devs for coming up with that. I'd rather not engage in a clunky, awkward, unfun trade system that we see here in POE. Another byproduct of the trading economy is the prices of items can be really silly. The most that I found in this game is 2 divines that dropped for me, and I've sold a whole bunch of items between 10 to 200 to 250 chaos. But my biggest hits, my biggest profit items have been so far. One was a charm, which I ended up selling for 3 divines. A charm, a little tiny charm, is worth more probably than all of my items put together. And it's worth more probably than all of the unique items that I have found in this game. And I have found hundreds of unique items, okay? This game has like 24% of the helmets I found, and that is 6, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 25 helmets. There are roughly 100 unique helmets in this game. And imagine for all of these tabs, we're talking about 1,000 unique items, roughly. And unfortunately, at least 80% of them are utter trash. And you could put together 80% of these unique items, and they're going to be worth less than this one of these tiny little charms that I sold. All of these unique items being worth less than a tiny charm is very awkward. I'm not a huge fan of it, honestly. I do think the game has too much clutter, too many garbage affixes, too many garbage unique, too many even garbage just whatever this and that, and a lot of it fills up your inventory. It makes a loot filter absolutely mandatory, and a strict one at that, to be absolutely mandatory. And that is another aspect of the game that I didn't enjoy. Managing my inventory, especially before this extra little sack that I have here. Before you get that, and if you don't choose to go that route, the inventory space is just insufficient. I think this is like 2013 inventory space, perhaps. In 2023, especially after Diablo 4's stash debacle, I think we deserve more inventory space. I understand that there's an entire metagame around which items to keep and which items to actually ignore as you're leveling through the game and as you're progressing through content. I understand that that's a skill, but at the same time, it's just such an awkward design, in my opinion, especially when some of these larger items like bows take up so much space that's something that was an unpleasant experience for me, is how little space we have and how many garbage items there are in the game. But overall, the itemization is just incredibly deep. Unfortunately, some of it gets shallowed down into, oh, you just need life and res and spell suppression on basically every single item slot. And that's something that's a little bit frustrating as well. The crafting in this game, again, something that is quite deep, and you require multiple videos with tutorials to understand how to optimally do it. And yeah, it's just incredibly deep. Not trivial to fully master. And now let me go over my review of the game and some of the scores that I gave it. So you can see I did a similar review for Everspace 2 and Diablo 4. I haven't done one for Last Epoch yet, just because the game hasn't actually officially released yet. It's still early access, but I hope to be able to do one in February, guys. And so in terms of story and dialogue, I don't know, it was alright, I guess. You know, it's an ARPG, I don't really care. Cinematics, I don't think they have too many. Not very impressive. Again, I don't really care. Ambience is great. I think you can clearly feel the Diablo-themed music, ambience, and the dark, gritty world design. I think it was great. It's just a little bit rough around the edges, which is why I gave it a 9. But overall, I really like it. I really like the world and the music, the sound, the whole package. Early game and exploration is quite fun in this game. The thing that's holding it back is the fact that there's just too many things to do. Too many skill gems. How do you, as a beginner, go into this game and go like, I want to play this thing? And unfortunately, not all skill gems are made equal, and a lot of them are probably trash, or at the very least not viable early game. And that makes it not a great early game experience when you brick your build because you don't know what you're doing, because you went in blind without a guide. The game is not very noob friendly, I have to say. You probably want to be running this game with a guide in most scenarios. The activities, the late game activities, especially in this game, are phenomenal. The 10 years of development that have gone into all of these late game activities is clearly evident, and it's a beauty. It's a thing of beauty. I hope Last Epoch take the best out of these activities and layer in some of them, at least some of the concepts that exist in Path of Exile into Last Epoch, because I'm a huge fan of the game and I only want to see it succeed. Same as Path of Exile, honestly, and even Diablo 4, Everspace 2. I want all games to be as awesome as possible, because then we get to enjoy them more, and that can only be a good thing. But in terms of the late game loop, I gave it a 9, partially because of the trading. If trading was smoother, or maybe there was an option to turn it off and, I don't know, increase drop rates and make drops go straight to your stash, resources at the very least, maybe I would give it a 10 then. But you know, it's not bad or anything. It's still phenomenal. And as you can see, relative to Everspace 2 and Diablo 4, the late game loop of Path of Exile just blows the two out of the water. It's not even in the same category. These two games don't have an end game loop compared to Path of Exile. This game has a proper end game loop, fully fleshed out, well designed, that you can sink thousands of hours into, honestly. And then bug polish, it's a clean game. I give it a 9. There's some stutter stepping here and there. But yeah, it could be 9, 9.5. It's solid. Overall value for the price, I would say it's even higher than Everspace 2 and Diablo 4. The game is free to play. However, it's not very enjoyable without buying a lot of the stash tabs. You don't need to buy any of the cosmetics. They don't add any value, at least to me. And so I gave it a 9.5. This is one of the highest values that you get for a game, similar to Dota 2. Dota 2 I would put at 10, because you don't need to spend a single dollar on Dota 2 to enjoy it. There's no pay to win mechanics. There's no pay for convenience mechanics in Dota. So that is probably the highest value for price I would give on any game. But basically, the ultimate grinder ARPG fan game is Path of Exile. It's the kind of game where you just can't invest a little bit of time and enjoy it as much as you would if you invested, if you made it your main game. And I think that's how it's similar to Dota as well. Dota 2 and pretty much a lot of the MOBAs are games that you play as your main game, and you don't really have room for other games. You every now and then you take a break and you catch up on something else, but you always go back to it, and you need to, if you want to stay at least somewhat competitive and at least somewhat technically knowledgeable within the game, you have to invest a lot of time, both POE and Dota 2. And I'm pretty sure this is why this game didn't stick with me back in 2013, because that's the year that I started to play Dota 2 as well. I mean, obviously I'd played Dota 1 like 10 years prior to that, but having gone back into Dota, and I remember it was around TI3, good times. TI3 was phenomenal, and that got me hooked up on Dota 2. And so 2013, I was, in the middle of my Dota 2 enjoyment, and POE came around, and I just couldn't get into it because this game requires your full commitment. You can't play POE and Dota 2 at the same time. That doesn't work. In today's setup that I have for myself, I'm not sure that I have enough time for POE. I will try to be able to, enjoy it as much as I can, but it's tough. I struggle playing games, especially games with the complexity of POE or let's say Dota, StarCraft. Playing such games and not being able to be very good at them, that's very frustrating for me. But I will try to put more hours into it, and this is why I put 200 to 1,000 hours. I have, I don't know, roughly let's say 100 hours in this game over the last couple of weeks since Affliction hit, and then I probably had another 100, 200 before that from when I played it in 2013. And so that's the kind of gameplay hours that I've had in it, but I probably am looking into investing more. We'll see when though, because for the next season I'll be playing Last Epoch because it's right around launch probably. And so overall verdict, I think this game is a work of art. Honestly, I do believe that. I think the devs have done an incredible job, and they have definitely raised the bar for ARPGs worldwide. And that is something that is very commendable in my mind. I hope Last Epoch can do the same. But yeah, this is the leader when it comes to ARPGs today. And that's why I give it a 9.5. This is something that I had heard about, and I've heard many people express this opinion. But now that I have gone back into the game and I have played it for myself, I am definitely in agreement. This is the game to beat when it comes to creating brand new ARPGs. It's phenomenal. So, with that, thank you for sticking around and hearing me ramble about my adventures with POE. Don't worry, I will be back with Last Epoch soon. And I want to also, I guess apologize for kind of dropping off and not creating any YouTube videos for a while. I've been hard on myself too for not doing that. It's been just a, let's say, challenging couple months, between getting sick, the entire household, and then just feeling burnt out for playing Last Epoch so much around the Beastmaster build that I did, and kind of procrastinating, doing the human thing. But I do recall it was last year around Christmas when I started getting a little bit more serious about starting up a YouTube channel. So I'm roughly closing in on the 1 year mark. And so with that, I'm looking to create a few more videos to share some parts about my journey, some thoughts, some reflections on the experience. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to creating some of that, especially with the good vibes that the Christmas holidays bring. And also, I will probably try to create at least a few more Path of Exile videos, sharing my experience, some of my learnings, some of my thoughts as well on some key game aspects. And also, massive thank you to everybody that helped me while I was playing. I learned so much about PoE just from asking questions to chat and everybody that showed up. I think Hermit Craig and Wara come to mind. I think they answered so many of my questions. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. You helped me get better at the game by a lot. And with that, I hope to see you all in the next video. If you like this one, do consider liking, subscribing, Or if you want to check my progress on Twitch, look at a link to my Twitch channel below. I hope you have a great time over the holidays. Take it easy. ごちそうさまでした。